Elephant Man Podcast Network, Grown Man Conversations, dealing with elephants in the room. What's up? It's your man, DB. Like, subscribe, share, hit the button, the notification bell button in the top right corner, so you can always know when we are giving out new content. And we are going to be giving out information and different things like this. It says Imago Day. I am Imago Day mugs. We got some other merch coming out, but we got my brother.
My
man, Chris Crayton, Deacon Chris Crayton from Bible Way Church of God's Word. My brother, we go back years. What is going on, my brother?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm glad to have you on here, man.
I love it.
My man is with the John Maxwell Group, certified speaker, trainer, coach with the John Maxwell Group. And I'm going to look at the information at the bottom. It says johnmaxwellgroup.com/Chris Crayton, johnmaxwellgroup.com/Chris Crayton. My first question is this. How did you come across this program? Like, how did you get it? There's so many different programs and so much stuff going on. How did you come across this program?
Well, you know what, man? I think one day maybe an email popped up. You know, I got an email about this John Maxwell Group, and I came home and I told my wife, I was like, man, because we've been talking about leadership anyway, just taking some type of leadership course, some type of training, because I've been on this leadership thing for a minute. It's like thirsty for it, just to learn about how to lead effectively. And I came home one day and I didn't expect her to be like, hey, you know what, you should do it. And she did. It kind of like threw me off guard, because when I came to her with the information, she was, because it was heavy on me about taking some type of leadership training and just learning about leading effectively. Wow. And she was like, you should do it. And I'm like, yo, this is going to cost some money. And I'm like,
investment, right?
But she was like, do it, and that's why, like, if you ask me today, I'm like, man, she was the one who kind of pushed this on me. Not pushed it on me, but kind of pushed me in it,
Wow.
But I love that support that I got from her. So from then, and I was, when I signed up for it, I was a little nervous. And then it's like the Lord just kind of made a way, because it wasn't cheap, but He opened doors where I could, invest into myself and, actually invest in learning. And so I was able to make payments, set it up, went to the conference, went through the training, spent a couple of days in Florida to check it out. And that was something different in itself, because I had to go to Florida to do this. And,
wow.
And I'm still growing up in a way. I've never flown and went on a plane and flown to Florida by myself and left my family. And, but I had to be there for a couple of days. And when I went, there, the Lord really shared with me, it's like, look, this is not, this is something that you have to do. And, you have to go through it, because if you don't, if you miss out, if you don't go through it the right way, you'll miss out on the original intention of it, So I went through it and went through the conference and went through the courses and met people. And I'm looking at, man, all kinds of people, just like from Kenya and, from different parts of the world. And, I'm running into all kind of pastors, and they like, yo, we just thirsty and we just want to learn and just, bring this back home so we can lead in our communities, lead in our groups, lead at our church, lead, just bring back material, wow. to help us out. I ran into one guy, he was an 18-year-old kid, and he was like, I just want to learn how to be a better leader.
That is
amazing. That's how I came across it though, man. I was excited. And again, like I said, my wife just like pushed me, like, do it, and I love that voice to say, do it, so that's how I came across
awesome. So is anything, has it changed would you say have it impact your life, or did it change your life? Is it any of the points or anything that you learned about yourself just taking this leadership course, and did it impact your life or change your life in any way?
Yeah, and you know what, it showed me that leadership is not something that you just pick up after a course, but it got to be something that you hunger for, that you want.
Okay.
And I think it's one of those things that it don't give you something, but it woke up something. You know what I'm saying? It kind of like pushed or pushed you into something that you never knew was inside already. You know, because it don't make you become a leader because you come back with a certification or anything like that. But it's one of those things where it kind of like it speaks to the leader in you already. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when I went down there, I was already thirsty for, just checking out leadership. Just I've learned from some situations that I've been involved in, some at work, some successes, some failures, some victories, some downfalls, some defeats. And it's like, through all that, I've been watching it like, man, you know what? You gotta, it's not about a piece of paper, but it's about a heart. You know what I'm saying? It's about really having a heart to say, hey, you know what? I care for somebody else more than myself, and I want to, lead effectively. Actually, what happened, what pushed me on this journey, was a couple of experiences I had at work at the time. I was working as a shift manager at one of the steel mills over here, and that I picked up my first leadership book, and it was by Miles Monroe. Yeah. And
Oh, okay.
it was like
The late
maybe
Miles
like,
Monroe.
yeah, 4 or 5 keys to leadership, something like that. And it's like I just been watching and just reading that, and I was just picking up videos and just watching how I work, how things went at work with me, because at one time I was like, man, I'm terrible. This is not working. I'm catching flack from my crew, things are not working out. And then, I remember just praying, just going to work one day, and I was praying, and God said, hey, you know what? I was like just talking, you know how you do the talk.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, Lord, this thing is bigger than me. And I remember hearing him say, yo, but I'm bigger than it, trust me.
Wow.
So that put me on this tip like, yo, okay, you know what? Teach me how to lead effectively, because it's not about a product. It's not about a schedule. It's about how to win a team, how to run a team, and how to do it effectively. And it's not even just at work, but then you're talking about doing this at home. You're talking about in your communities. You're talking about in your church. You're talking about, wherever and at work, and it's effective leadership is like man, you talk about something that draws people. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? It calls people to say, hey, you know what? I want to give my best because of the what you give me as a leader, and so it was one of those things where just the experiences that I had, and it just pushed me to say, hey, you know what? I want to learn how to be a better leader. I'm reading it through scripture, and then it's all confirmed in scripture. You're looking at the prime example, Christ, man, being
Yes,
the
sir.
ultimate leader, you know what I'm saying? And just looking at how, sometimes we look at what he did, but we don't look at how he did things. And when you start looking into how he did things, you're talking about, wow, I've been doing this leadership thing wrong for a long time, because we put demands on people and expect them to meet the demands, and don't give them freedom to do it. You know what I'm saying? Well, what he did was he freed us, then didn't give us commands. He gave us he gave us promises. You know what I'm saying? He gave us purpose. So now, because of what he's giving you, you want to do. You want to keep, you like he said, if you love me, you keep my commandments. Well, because you love him, he freed you, and now you want to keep those commandments. So that's the same thing with leadership, man. It's giving somebody, setting people up to be free, to give you their best. You know what I'm saying? And they'll give their best because you freed them. It's hard to get the best out of somebody if you don't free them. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So
powerful.
effective leadership frees you. Effective leadership speaks over you. So it says, it pulls out things that you didn't even know was there. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, this journey just caused me to go back and look at things throughout my life. Just look at how people I've been involved with, how they said things that make me say, wow, I didn't even know that was there. or make you think about things that you didn't even think about thinking about, that saw things that you weren't, they looking at things maybe further ahead where you were probably still stuck at one. They at 5 looking at you talking about, this is what I see. You know what I'm saying? So it causes you to, this is what healthy leadership looks like, So I
Wow.
want to be that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's amazing how you said this course covers all of these areas of life, all of these bases, not just leadership at church, not just leadership at work, leadership at home, leadership, I mean, just making you a better, well-rounded person. Now, what I see right here, it says there's 6 core areas. Are there any other areas that you use, or that I mean, of course you would want somebody to absorb all 6, but are there any 2 or 3 that just one of your favorite, or a ringer, a bell ringer, or just goes off in your spirit that says, man, these core right here, you can do these and you can go a long way with these points or pointers?
Yeah. You know what? There is, James said it too. There's a book it's a book by John Maxwell called Everybody Communicate, Few Connect. And we went to the last men's retreat we went on, I talked about that, and just briefly, but one of the biggest things that we have to do as leaders is to listen. I like James said it. It's a 119. He's like, you know what did he say? He said, be quick to hear, slow
Yeah.
to speak, slow to wrath. So quick to hear, intensely hearing, listening, slow to speak, speak carefully, slow to wrath or slow to anger, be slow to respond. So he's inviting, he's saying, hey, you know what, listen intensely, uh, respond with patience, take time to respond. And then he's saying, react in patience too, you know. And one of the things that we don't do is something and it's actually something that we're taught not to do. And we're taught to communicate, but when we think of communication, we're talking about just talking.
Yeah.
I got something to say. I remember when in college, let's take communications 101, how to stand in front of a crowd and to give a speech, but we're not really challenged to listen effectively. You know what I'm saying? We're put in ways where we're taught to not listen. And because a lot of times you think about it, sometimes when and I still deal with it now, I have to actually make myself sit down and listen to someone talk, because naturally we want to go to the place where we want to have a response quickly. You know what I'm saying? We want to react to what they have to say. We want to respond to what they have to say. And sometimes it's just like, no, sit down and let me just listen. Because you find out that when you listen, you actually gain more of an understanding of what that other person is dealing with. And you know
Man.
what? When you listen, they'll sit up and it's like, yo, man, you actually took time to listen. Guess what? I'm willing to share more. And then I'm willing to, spend more time into hearing what you have to say. And then next thing you know, you have, you create an environment, leadership creates environment. Effective leadership creates an environment, and it's an environment of learning. Christ said it. He said, you know what? He said, take my burden upon me, because it's light, it's easy. He said, come
Yeah.
learn of me. He's setting up a tone. He's setting up an environment. And when you set that
Wow.
environment, you're talking about setting up a place where you can actually pull the best out of that person that they didn't even know they was there. Now they trust you, you know. So when they trust you, they say, okay, you know what, I'm willing to, because people are not going to follow, anybody that they don't trust. And, when you're talking about leading effectively, when they trust you, they'll give you the best. But when they
Man.
don't, they're not going to give it to you. So you set up, and the leadership sets up that environment. So to go back to the question, because I'll keep going on and on. The best thing, one of the most important things we can do is to listen. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
When we listen, you find out. Sometimes um, we draw conclusions before we even hear the whole story, and when we listen, you'll find out that you win a better understanding. You'll find out from whether they be right or wrong. If you at least listen, you can see, okay, you know what, I see where the source of this is coming from. And it's not in just one engagement. It's not in just one sit down talk. Sometimes it may take, he's listening is a process of observing. You know, it takes time. That might take a week. It might take 2 weeks. I mean, you have to carefully study. There was a guy, and I don't remember his name, but this was back in the day. I think this was like, I believe it was back in like the 80s, mid 80s, you know, so we probably was still in high school, you know.
Yeah.
But this guy he's a black guy. He's a musician, and he wanted to find out why the Klan, or why, you know, the Klan hated, you know, black people. So he said, hey, you know what? He set up a meeting with this grand poobah of the Klan, whatever his name was, whatever the position was, but he was like the high up.
Yeah.
The guy did not know that he was a black man, so he agreed to the meeting. But to make a long story short, they met, and he, you know, it was very rocky during the beginning of that meeting. But he said, the only thing I came in here was to the black guy, the musician. He said the only thing I wanted to do was to learn why they hated us. So he took time to listen, and he said he listened. And he said he listened. And this was years as he listened. He went to their meetings and he listened. He met at his house and he listened. He said it got to the point where the guy stopped meeting with him. He would originally come with his bodyguard, but then he stopped coming with his bodyguard. But then he still listened, you know, and they would still listen. They had these talks, so they became friends. He said, you know, he was like, yo, how can you put two and two together? A black man is a friend with this guy who was the head of the Klan. Eventually, the guy gave up his position as head of the Klan, you know, because he said, and one of the things I remember listening, one of the things he said was, yo, he took time to understand me. He listened, you know. So you'll find out that leadership, when you start listening, you know, when we really intensely listen and take the time just to understand, you know, you may find out that you win more than you lose. You know what I'm saying?
Man.
So,
you know what? And as far as when you're saying that, listening not to respond, but listening to hear.
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we as men, sometimes we can listen and wait for so we can respond back, and not really listening. But what you're saying is effective leadership is listening, hearing, understanding, compassionate, just listening to hear, and not to have an answer ready in return. So that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Any other points that's powerful right there. Any other points from the six core that blessed you, or that you live by, or that stuck out to you, or wrong some resonance in you?
Yeah, you even in that area too. And now, even though we're talking about how important it is to listen now, and this is not just the core. This is not just that the core group or the 6 areas that we study in, because in the book, throughout the course, they talked about communicating to connect, you know, becoming a person of influence, 5 areas of growth, putting your dream to the test, being a real success. These are some of the core groups, some of the core areas that we study and, that we look at in the program. But when you start looking at, when you just mix them all up, it comes down to listening. It comes down to respecting the person that you hear. It comes down to communicating effectively. And when you talk about this, when you talk about listening, if we look at James 1:19, he said, listen. He said, he said, hear, respond, then react. Let's quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. So there's a listening, there's a response, and there's a reaction. Now, primarily, the goal and the main one is to listen. The other ones are still important. You still have to respond, and we still have to react. But he said, in those, you still that's careful consideration after you listen. You know what I'm saying? So, we still want to respond, and we still want to react. But that's because we listen effectively. You know what I'm saying? We took the time to understand. And then another good area, one thing that when it comes down to just effective leadership and just throughout the core group, you want to ask good questions. You know what I'm saying? I'm still learning that one myself, because you know how it is when my wife get on me because the kids. Sometimes I'll just, hey, how was your day? And they'll give me a general answer. It was fine. You know what I'm saying? She's like, look, man, you got to really find those good questions. You really got to get to the point where because the questions have to challenge them. The questions have to touch something to make them say, hey, you know what, let me open up. And it has to be not just one question, not just one day, but repetitively, you know. And when you look at questions, the thing about questions is, like somebody described as questions are those things. It's that thing that takes someone on a quest. It puts them in a place where they look further ahead. You know, it challenges someone or individual to look a little bit further or go a little bit deeper than where they are. You know what I'm saying?
That's awesome.
And so, effective questions are man, that's gold. You know, you really got to learn how to ask the right questions. And then, you know, it causes somebody to think. You know what I'm saying? It causes them to open up their mind. It causes them to open up their heart and start saying, hey, you know what? I like it. Let's look at this. In Luke, Christ dealt with we remember the scripture, Christ dealt with the woman that was caught up in adultery.
Okay.
Now, after all that, and we know the story. You know, he came, he kneeled down, started writing stuff in the ground. The ones that had stones in their hands, you know, because whatever he writing, they start dropping them one at a time. But then he asked her a question that challenged her to see something and to open up to something and to say something that she probably would not have said if he didn't ask the question. He said, yo, where are your accusers? You know, not nothing heavy, you know, just where are your accusers? Well, guess what? Here she is speaking what she sees according to what he has done. I have no accuser. Then he said, hey, this was like that prime example of what I love about leadership and how the Lord leads. You know, he said, where are your accusers? She said, I have none. He said, I accuse you. I don't accuse you neither. He freed her. Then he said, go and sin no more. He released her, you know?
Wow.
So this is what effective leadership do, man. It empowers you to go out and to be your best and do your best. You know what I'm saying? It enables you to because you're free now. You know what I'm saying? So, but
that's amazing.
Again, yeah, he started with a question.
Perfect.